The winter skies above Europe held secrets in 1945, secrets that screamed through clouds at impossible speeds. The Messerschmitt Me 262 had torn open the heavens with its jet engines. This steel phantom moved 120 miles per hour, faster than any Allied fighter could dream. Its 4 cannons could shred a flying fortress in heartbeats. German pilots called it untouchable. Allied airmen had another name for it: terror. But somewhere in those same deadly skies flew a different kind of warrior. The P-51 Mustang, propeller-driven, seemingly obsolete, yet destined to prove that courage could still challenge the future itself. This is the story of how an older machine met tomorrow's weapon, how patience conquered speed, how one pilot's refusal to surrender rewrote the rules of aerial combat forever. The sound arrived first, not the familiar roar of piston engines that had filled European skies since 1939. This was different, sharp, cutting, otherworldly. It was the voice of the future speaking too soon. Allied bomber crews heard it slicing through their formations, a mechanical scream that meant death was coming faster than anything they had ever faced. The Me 262 didn't announce itself with the throaty growl of a fought wolf. It whispered past like a steel ghost. Picture yourself strapped into a P-51 Mustang cockpit. Your Merlin engine pushes you toward 440 miles per hour. You feel like the master of your domain, king of the aerial battlefield. Then something flashes past your wing. A blur of silver and menace traveling at speeds that defy everything you understand about flight. You bank hard. You push your throttle to its absolute limit. You chase with everything your machine can give. But the ghost simply vanishes. It doesn't twist away in a dogfight. It doesn't climb desperately for altitude. It just accelerates beyond your reach, as if the laws of combat no longer apply to warfare. The Me 262 carried 4 30mm cannons in its nose. Each shell packed enough explosive power to tear a bomber's wing clean off. Skill meant nothing against such firepower. Experience counted for little when facing such speed. Veterans who had survived the Battle of Britain suddenly felt helpless. Men who had fought from North Africa to Normandy found themselves prey in skies they once commanded. One Mustang pilot scrawled in his diary that night. His words captured the terror perfectly. "I had him in my sights. I fired everything I had. I pushed my engine until I thought it would tear itself apart. But he wasn't there anymore. He lit those jet engines and disappeared into nothing. I wasn't fighting another pilot. I was fighting a machine from the future." The German pilots had their own name for this revolutionary fighter. They called it Schwalbe, the Swallow. But to every Allied airman who encountered it, the Me 262 had only one name: Nightmare. Yet even nightmares have weaknesses. Even ghosts must touch the earth. And in those moments of vulnerability, the future would discover it was still mortal. The factories of Detroit and England had been America's secret weapon long before any jet took flight. While Germany clung to handfuls of revolutionary machines, the United States flooded European skies with rivers of steel. P-51 Mustangs rolled off assembly lines by the thousands. Thunderbolts, Hellcats, Corsairs followed in endless waves. Each loss could be replaced. Each pilot could be trained. Each mission could continue. Germany's jets were marvels of engineering, but marvels mean nothing without time, fuel, or pilots to fly them. Each Me 262 lost was irreplaceable. Each crash meant resources that could never be recovered. The stage was set for a collision between two philosophies of war: quality against quantity, innovation against endurance, the phantom of speed against the guardian of persistence. But one question burned in every Allied cockpit: How do you kill what you cannot catch? How does a propeller-driven warrior from an older age bring down the future itself? The answer would come from doctrine, from strategy, from the desperate choices that hurled these two machines toward their fateful encounter. America had learned its lessons in fire and blood. Schweinfurt and Regensburg were names carved into memory with the screams of dying bombers. Days when flying fortresses fell like burning meteors across German skies. Military planners had once believed their heavy bombers were flying battleships, bristling with machine guns, protected by tight formations, capable of defending themselves against any enemy fighter. Reality shattered that illusion with brutal efficiency. Against swarms of German interceptors, the bombers were slaughtered. Black Thursday proved that no fortress could protect itself without escort. So America turned to salvation on wings. The P-51 Mustang became more than an airplane. It became insurance. It became hope. With its laminar flow wings and Packard-built Merlin engine, it could fly farther than any escort before. Over 2,000 miles without refueling. Enough range to shepherd bombers from England into the heart of Germany and back again. The Mustang became a shadow welded to every bomber formation, a guardian angel armed with 650 caliber machine guns, daring any enemy to attack its charges. From late 1943 through 1944, these propeller-driven hunters ravaged the Luftwaffe. German aces who had survived years of combat fell one by one. Losses mounted faster than new pilots could be trained. The skies that once belonged to the Reich turned hostile. With each dogfight lost, Germany's ability to defend its cities grew thinner. Faced with aerial destruction, Berlin made a desperate gamble. If America's doctrine was long-range escort and relentless pressure, Germany's answer became speed and shock. The Me-262 embodied that final roll of the dice. The jet was not designed for traditional dogfights. It was engineered to disrupt, to pierce bomber formations like a steel arrow, to spit fire from its cannons and vanish before escorts could react. German commanders saw it as a formation breaker, a blade meant to stab through the heart of Allied air armadas. But Hitler's obsession warped the machine's destiny. He demanded the jet be used as a bomber. He wanted vengeance weapons to strike Allied cities. His interference delayed the fighter's true purpose. Generals pleaded for the Me-262 to be used as intended. But time was bleeding away. Fuel supplies dwindled. Factories crumbled under bombing raids. Skilled pilots vanished into unmarked graves. Still, when the jet finally appeared in significant numbers, it felt like divine intervention. To Allied crews, it was speed made manifest. To desperate Luftwaffe commanders, it was answered prayer. Yet even miracles carry flaws. Jet engines were fragile. They burned out after just 20 hours of flight time. Maintenance devoured precious resources that Germany no longer possessed. And worst of all, when landing or taking off, the Me-262 lost its supernatural advantage. Its speed fell to that of any vulnerable aircraft. In those moments, the Phantom became prey. Two doctrines prepared to clash in the winter of 1944 and 1945. America's strategy of endurance flooding skies with propeller-driven persistence. Germany's desperation unleashing phantoms of technological salvation. The stage was ready. A propeller warrior would soon meet the ghost head-on. History would judge which vision of warfare would triumph when courage faced the future. The Allied commanders knew one fundamental truth. You could not chase the Me-262 and live. To pursue was to die. So they stopped chasing and started hunting instead. The Mustang was reborn, not as a duelist seeking aerial combat, but as a predator using patience and cunning. Its weapons were timing and persistence. Its prey was the very weakness no jet could escape. The Me-262 was invincible in flight, but to reach the sky or return to Earth, it had to slow down. It had to crawl. It had to reveal itself as mortal. In those fragile seconds, the future became vulnerable. American squadrons received new orders. Do not pursue jets in flight. Wait for them instead. Watch their airfields. Study their patterns. Mustangs began circling German air bases like hawks above a rabbit warren. Clouds became camouflage. Silence became strategy. Patience became the deadliest weapon. When a jet lifted off struggling to gain altitude, the hunters swooped. When a jet descended bleeding speed toward landing, it became a lamb among wolves. One German pilot admitted years later that takeoff felt like begging for death. Landing was worse. We knew somewhere in those clouds a Mustang was waiting. We could feel eyes watching us. This doctrine became known as the ambush protocol, and it worked with devastating efficiency. Jets fell not in high-speed duels, but in carefully planned attacks at their most vulnerable moments. Innovation also lived within the Mustang itself. Water methanol injection systems gave Merlin engines sudden bursts of fury. Enough extra speed to lunge when life hung on split seconds. It was not enough to match a jet in level flight, but it was enough to strike, to escape, to break free from impossible situations. The Americans also turned the jet's own design against it. The Shomo jet engines were marvels of engineering, but they were also curses. Fragile, short-lived, prone to overheating. Push them too hard and turbine blades shattered. Demand too much and fuel bled away in minutes. The Mustang only had to endure, to outlast, to survive. Victory was no longer about outrunning the future. It was about outlasting it. But strategy means nothing without the men who carry it out. Enter Lieutenant William Shomo. He was no household name. Not yet. He was a reconnaissance pilot, a guardian of others rather than a glory seeker. His eyes were sharper than his reputation. His discipline was unyielding as steel. He had flown countless missions where survival depended not on fame, but on patience. He understood how to stalk, how to watch, how to strike only when success was certain. When fate brought him face to face with phantoms of the jet age, Shomo would prove that patience and courage could rewrite the rules of aerial warfare. The doctrine was established. The hunters were positioned. The ghosts of steel would meet men of flesh and determination. The question now was elegantly simple. When the ambush came, who would emerge victorious? The Predator or the Phantom? January 16, 1945. The sky above Slovakia was the color of gunmetal, heavy with winter's bitter breath. Ice crystals formed inside cockpits. Engines fought against the killing cold. Into this bleak morning lifted Lieutenant William Shomo. His P-51 Mustang cut through the frigid air. Beside him flew Captain Paul Ireland in an F-5 Lightning, a fragile reconnaissance bird carrying cameras instead of cannons. Their mission seemed routine: photograph enemy positions, provide escort, return safely. But war has no respect for routine. At 2,500 feet, flying beneath the ceiling of gray clouds, Shomo's experienced eyes caught movement. A dark cluster cutting toward them through the winter sky. 3 fighters, Focke-Wulf 190s, sleek deadly predators with cannon that could tear a fighter apart. Behind them, shimmering silver in the pale light, came a shape unlike anything else in the sky. The Arado 234 Blitz, the world's first operational jet bomber. A phantom built for speed and reconnaissance and escape. Ireland's voice crackled over the radio, tension sharp as broken glass. "Bill, we've got company. Heavy company coming fast. Shomo's mind calculated rapidly. He was flying escort. His duty was protection. By all reasonable doctrine, he should dive away. Shield the lightning. Hope the Germans passed by. But reason does not define moments that reshape history. He gripped his control stick tighter. His voice carried the weight of decision. We fight! The Mustang had been trained to ambush jets in their weakness. But now, there would be no ambush. Only a head-on gamble against 3 enemy fighters and a ghost of steel. The first Focke-Wulf came hard, cannons flashing like deadly fireworks. Shomo rolled his Mustang into a desperate spiral. The world spun around him in a blur of gray and white. He yanked the nose up, fired a burst from his .650 caliber machine guns. Tracers sliced through the air like red-hot needles stitching death across the sky. The Focke-Wulf erupted. Fire blossomed from its engine like a deadly flower. A comet plunging toward the frozen ground below. Ireland gasped into his radio. "Good God, Bill, you got him clean!" But there was no time for celebration. The second Focke-Wulf dove straight for Shomo's tail. Bullets rattled his fuselage, ripping through aluminum skin, missing vital components by mere inches. Shomo slammed his stick into a barrel roll, twisting the Mustang in a desperate corkscrew. He reversed direction, brought his guns to bear, fired again. The Focke-Wulf bucked like a wounded animal, shuddered, broke apart in midair, fragments raining through the clouds like burning confetti. 2 down. But the real battle had only just begun. Now came the blitz, the Arado 234 turning to flee. Its twin Jumo jet engines screaming their mechanical song of escape. At over 450 miles per hour, it was pulling away rapidly. Every second widened the gap between hunter and prey. Every moment moved the jet closer to safety and invisibility. Shomo understood. This was the moment of truth. If the jet escaped, intelligence it carried could mean death for thousands of Allied personnel. If he let it go, the mission would fail completely. He shoved his throttle forward, unleashing every ounce of power the Merlin engine possessed. The Mustang surged forward, straining and quivering at its absolute limits. His eyes narrowed with concentration, his jaw clenched with determination. He whispered to himself like a prayer, "Not today. Not on my watch." The distance stretched cruelly between them. 800 yards. 700. Still too far for accurate gunnery. His weapons would be useless at such range. But he held his aim steady. He trusted in probability and skill. He squeezed the trigger with surgical precision. 50 caliber rounds tore from his wings, streaking toward the shrinking shape of the jet. Most vanished harmlessly into gray emptiness, but a few found their mark. They slammed into the right engine of the Arado like hammer blows. A burst of black smoke, a flash of orange flame. The jet shuddered like a wounded bird. For the first time, the Phantom coughed like any mortal machine. Shomo roared with primitive triumph, firing again with renewed fury. Another burst ripped across the fuselage. The Arado staggered, wing dipping, altitude bleeding away like life from a wound. Inside the cockpit, the German pilot fought desperately against gravity and flame. But the jet was no longer a ghost. It had become prey. At 400 yards, Shomo pressed his attack with relentless precision. His tracers carved into the silver body of the Blitz, sparks spraying like deadly fireworks against the winter sky. The jet rolled once in a final death spiral, then plunged toward Earth. A streak of smoke and flame, a scream of turbines choking into silence. Ireland's voice cracked with awe and disbelief. "Bill, you got the jet. You actually killed a jet bomber." In the span of minutes, a reconnaissance escort pilot had destroyed two conventional fighters and the world's first operational jet bomber. A propeller-driven Mustang had reached into the future and torn it from the sky. When Shomo circled back, the heavens were eerily quiet. The wreckage below smoldered in patches of dirty snow. His hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from the weight of what had just occurred. He keyed his radio, his tone almost disbelieving at his own success. 3 confirmed kills. 1 was definitely a jet. History had shifted in those few violent minutes. The first jet kill on the Eastern Front belonged not to a famous ace or a squadron of specialized hunters. It was delivered by one Mustang pilot who simply refused to run when confronted by the impossible. In that frozen dawn, courage had outrun speed itself. The prophecy of the jet age had been interrupted by the roar of a piston engine and the will of one determined man. When Bill Shomo landed that gray afternoon, the entire airbase erupted in celebration. Ground crews swarmed his battle-scarred Mustang, eyes wide with wonder, voices incredulous with amazement. He had departed on a routine reconnaissance escort. He had returned as an instant ace. 3 kills in minutes. One of them representing the cutting edge of aviation technology. In the winter of 1945, such an achievement bordered on mythology. Shomo himself seemed stunned by the magnitude of his success. "I just did what the situation required," he muttered with characteristic understatement. "Nothing more than duty demanded." But the truth was infinitely larger than his modest words. In that single mission, he had struck fear into the heart of the jet age itself. The United States Army Air Forces wasted no time recognizing the achievement. Within weeks, Shomo received the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor in combat. The official citation told the story in crisp military language, but what it could never capture was the raw emotion. The sight of a piston fighter standing victorious over the supposed future of warfare. The message rippled across every Allied squadron in Europe. For Mustang pilots, it represented complete vindication. They had been taught not to chase jets. That victory lay only in patient ambush tactics. But Shomo had proven that courage and precision could topple even phantoms of speed. His victory became legend. Whispered in ready rooms, retold in mess halls, pilots strapped into cockpits with renewed confidence burning in their hearts. If one man could bring down a jet in fair combat, perhaps they all could. For the Luftwaffe, the psychological impact was devastating. Me-262 crews already dreaded takeoff and landing procedures. Now, even the sanctuary of high-speed flight seemed compromised. The myth of jet invincibility developed its first significant crack. A German pilot confessed years later, "We thought the jets made us gods of the sky. That day we learned we were still merely mortal." Strategically, Shomo's triumph highlighted the fundamental futility of Germany's technological gamble. The Me-262 and Arado 234 were brilliant machines, but brilliance without resources meant nothing. Each loss was absolutely irreplaceable. Each wreck represented another nail in the coffin of Hitler's dream of salvation through superior technology. Meanwhile, American factories continued pouring out P-51s like an endless mechanical tide. The contrast was brutal and decisive. Quality against quantity. Innovation against industrial endurance. In total war, endurance wins every time. Psychologically, the effect reached far beyond military airfields. Bomber crews who had watched jets slice through their formations like knives suddenly felt hope return. If a single Mustang could destroy a jet, perhaps they were not doomed after all. Hope rekindled resolve. With resolve came the determination to see the mission through. For the Germans' despair only deepened. The jet age had arrived too late to matter. Even its promise of revolutionary speed could not alter the tide of an already decided conflict. Instead of breaking Allied will, advanced technology only bled Germany's remaining resources faster than ever. Bill Shomo had not merely killed a jet bomber, he had killed an illusion. The dangerous illusion that technology alone could reverse a war already lost through strategic failures. In the cold skies above Slovakia, one man in a propeller-driven fighter had proved that courage, patience, and steady nerves could still bend the future to human will. The conclusion was crystal clear. The age of jets was dawning across the horizon, but the crown of victory still rested firmly on the wings of the Mustang. The story of Bill Shomo did not end on that frozen morning in Slovakia. It lived on in every hangar and briefing room across the European theater, in every whispered tale of men who dared attempt the impossible. The P-51 Mustang became far more than an airplane. It evolved into a symbol, the last king of the propeller age, a warrior of steel and fire who stood unflinching before the ghostly dawn of jet-powered warfare. Its Merlin engine's growl became the heartbeat of Allied victory. Its distinctive silhouette, long-nosed and predatory, was etched forever against gray European skies. The Me-262, by contrast, became legend for entirely different reasons. It represented brilliance born too late, a machine cursed by terrible timing, a phantom that promised salvation but delivered only despair. To historians, it marked the birth of modern air combat doctrine. To the pilots who flew it, the jet was both marvel and tomb. One veteran confessed decades later, "We flew the future, but we died trapped in the past." The legacy of their aerial clashes reveals a fundamental paradox. Speed without strategy means nothing. Technology without time is merely shadow. Courage, raw human courage, can bend the arc of history itself. For Bill Shomo, the Medal of Honor represented recognition. But it was not the true essence of his achievement. The essence was simpler and more profound. In the dying days of global war, when desperation birthed phantoms of steel, one man in a propeller-driven machine proved that skill, patience, and iron will could still prevail against any odds. Today, museums display the Mustang with proper reverence. Veterans speak its name with unmistakable pride. In every roar of modern jets that streak across our skies, there lingers the echo of that first confrontation, the day a piston warrior dragged a phantom back to Earth. The world remembers the Me-262 as the first of its revolutionary kind, but history remembers the Mustang as the fighter that helped close a war. When future generations ask who truly ruled the skies of Europe, the answer is not whispered. It is proclaimed by the legacy of a single winter morning. The jet age had officially begun, but the crown of victory belonged still to the Mustang and the men who flew it. War transcends mere machines. It becomes choices. It becomes human will. It becomes the eternal clash between desperation and endurance. The Messerschmitt. Me-262 offered a glimpse of tomorrow. Faster, fiercer, more terrifying than anything before. It embodied the dangerous dream that technology alone could rewrite the mathematics of defeat. To the Luftwaffe, it appeared miraculous. To Allied bomber crews, it materialized as pure nightmare. But in the end, miracles arrived too late to matter, and nightmares can always be conquered by sufficient courage. The P-51 Mustang was never the most advanced machine in the sky. It was not the fastest, not the most heavily armed, But it proved to be exactly enough. Enough to escort bombers that systematically destroyed the Reich's war-making capacity. Enough to bleed the Luftwaffe of its irreplaceable veteran pilots. Enough to outlast phantoms of speed. It was simply the right weapon at precisely the right moment in history. Wielded by men who absolutely refused to yield. Bill Shomo's fight over Slovakia was not the war's grandest battle. It did not single-handedly turn the tide of global conflict, but symbolically, it thundered across the world. It was the voice of an older age roaring defiance at the future, proving that courage and clarity of purpose could strike even the fastest ghost from winter skies. In his capable hands, the Mustang transcended its mechanical nature. It became a reminder that technology never wins wars alone. Men win wars. Strategy wins wars. Unbreakable resolve wins wars. The legacy of that morning whispers still through aviation history. Every time a modern fighter jet screams overhead, it carries shadows of that first duel between piston engine and jet turbine. Every pilot who straps into any cockpit, whether propeller-driven or jet-powered, owes something to the men who first proved that speed alone never equals victory. The jet age began with widespread fear among Allied air crews, but it was met with absolute defiance from men like Shomo. In that defiance, history delivered its final verdict on the matter. You can build the fastest machine imaginable. You can forge the sharpest technological blade. But it is the human spirit, steady and unbroken, that ultimately writes the ending. On January 16, 1945, over the gray skies of Slovakia, one Mustang and one pilot proved that truth forever. The future had arrived early, but the present was not finished fighting.